in the profound stillness preceding dawn on October 15th, 2018. In the rural expanse of Barron County, Wisconsin, a solitary, desperate call to 911 was made from the Closs family residence. The line was open, but no human voice pleaded for help. Instead, the dispatcher recorded only the muffled, ambiguous sounds of a struggle, a chaotic whisper from a home that should have been asleep. This haunting silence was the first and most critical clue. When sheriff's deputies arrived just minutes later, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, they discovered a scene that shattered the night's peace and defied all initial comprehension. The front door, barricaded from within, now hung open with its frame splintered violently around the lock, a clear testament to a brutal and forced entry. Inside, under the harsh glow of ceiling lights, the living room was in disarray, a stark contrast to the sleeping neighborhood. Denise and Jayme Closs were found, victims of a fatal attack, but their 13-year-old daughter, Jayme, the center of their world, was nowhere to be found. Her personal space was a time capsule of an interrupted life, a cell phone filled with messages from friends, the day's school outfit laid out, a backpack waiting by the door. All of it remained perfectly, eerily untouched. There were no signs of a frantic struggle from her, no scattered belongings, no footprint trail leading away from the property into the encompassing darkness. The unsettling evidence immediately dismissed the notion of a teenage runaway. This was something far more sinister. It was a surgical strike, a mission executed with cold precision. Someone had targeted this home with a grim and singular focus, descending from the shadows to take Jayme and then vanishing back into them just as completely, leaving behind a void of evidence and a community engulfed by a single, unanswerable question. How can a young girl be extracted from the heart of her own home without leaving a single, discernible trace? The mystery was absolute. As the days slowly bled into weeks, and weeks into a relentless, cold month, the massive search for Jayme Closs evolved into a disheartening exercise in sifting through an endless sea of noise and false hope. A dedicated tip line, established to funnel credible information to investigators, buzzed incessantly, becoming a river of hundreds of potential leads each passing day. These included reported sightings from anxious citizens in distant states, vague theories from self-proclaimed psychics, and persistent rumors that circulated through neighboring towns. Every single tip, no matter how improbable, was pursued by detectives and agents with a dogged, unwavering determination, and yet each one, without a single exception, ultimately dissolved into nothing. The investigation, for all its resources and manpower, had become a compass spinning wildly, unable to find its true north. Yet within this overwhelming chaos, a subtle and perplexing pattern began to emerge for the seasoned analysts reviewing the data. They noticed that the sheer, constant volume of misleading information, however well-intentioned it might have been, was having a peculiar and detrimental effect. It was consistently and effectively pulling the search's focus, media attention, and public effort away from the remote, densely forested and sparsely populated northern reaches of the county. This was an area of isolated cabins, winding logging trails, and notoriously poor cell phone service, a perfect, shadowy haven for secrets to remain buried indefinitely. The meticulously reconstructed timeline of the attack itself only deepened the unease, painting a portrait of chilling, rehearsed efficiency. From the moment the suspect's vehicle turned onto the Closs family's driveway to the moment its taillights disappeared back onto the main road, the entire, life-shattering event had taken less than 5 minutes. This breathtaking speed and coordination spoke not of a spontaneous, opportunistic crime, but of a predator who had studied his prey with intense, patient planning. Authorities scoured national databases for known offenders, interviewed transient workers from local industries, and probed the family's every personal connection. The result was a resounding void. No one fit the emerging profile. The perpetrator was a ghost, a phantom who moved unseen through the cracks of ordinary life, his dangerous obsession known only to himself. Meanwhile, the community of Barron and the watching nation lived in a state of suspended animation, caught between the piercing cold of fear and the fragile, fading warmth of hope. Then on the 10th of January, 2019, after 88 days of an agonizing, national silence that felt like an eternity, the story was irrevocably rewritten on a secluded, snow-dusted road in the small town of Gordon, located over 60 miles from Barron. A woman named Jayme Nutter, who happened to be out for a walk with her dog, was the unexpected agent of this miracle. She saw a thin, pale figure emerge from the thick, dark line of the pine forest, a stark contrast against the white and gray of the winter landscape. The girl was shivering, her feet bare and vulnerable against the frozen gravel, but her eyes, when they met Jean's, held a steady, determined, and lucid light that conveyed a story words could not. "I'm lost," the girl initially whispered, her voice fragile from disuse. But when Jean, her heart beginning to race, asked for a name, the girl replied with a clarity that cut through the cold air. "I'm Jayme Closs." In that single, breathtaking moment, the long, hopeless winter of waiting was over. The girl then pointed down the road toward a specific, isolated house that was partially hidden by trees, adding a crucial, chilling piece of information. "He's not there right now." The woman, understanding the monumental gravity of the situation, quickly led Jayme to a nearby neighbor's home, where the police were called. The isolated house that Jayme had indicated to the arriving officers was a stark, single-story structure that seemed to brood in the woods. Its windows were shrouded by furniture and makeshift coverings, turning it into a fortress of solitude and secrets. Inside, investigators would soon uncover the grim, physical reality of her captivity, a space that had been meticulously engineered for total control and concealment. A simple, plastic storage tub was positioned directly under the suspect's own bed, serving as a makeshift sleeping space, and heavy weights were stacked strategically against certain doors to act as a crude but effective alarm system. The man who had built and occupied this prison was identified within hours as Jake Thomas Patterson, a 21-year-old former sawmill worker. He was a person with no prior criminal record and, most perplexingly of all, no known link to the Closs family whatsoever. His arrest was as anticlimactic as his crime had been dramatic. He was apprehended without incident while driving in the area, surrendering calmly as if he had been expecting this moment. In the weeks that followed his quiet arrest, investigators began the meticulous process of piecing together the psychological architecture behind Jake Patterson's unthinkable actions. FBI profilers described him not as someone suffering from recognizable delusions, but as an individual profoundly and disturbingly detached from empathy, operating with a cold, almost mechanical logic. His motive, it became clear, was not rooted in a desire for revenge, passion, or any form of financial gain. It was a pure, unadulterated desire for absolute control over another human being. He had sought a form of ownership over a life, a concept he articulated during interviews with a chilling lack of emotion, as if he were discussing a simple business transaction or a logical conclusion. Inside the small, cramped, and isolated cabin, every object, every piece of furniture, and every spatial arrangement served this singular, all-consuming obsession. The windows were barricaded shut using heavy furniture and nailed-down boards, plunging the interior into a perpetual, gloomy twilight that blurred the line between day and night. The door to the small room where Jayme was kept confined for hours on end was often blocked by heavy weights that would clatter loudly to the floor if disturbed. Acting as a primitive but highly effective alarm system, Patterson enforced a strict, unvarying, and suffocating daily routine. Jayme, in her fight for mental survival, learned to decipher the hidden meaning of every sound, the specific cadence of his approaching footsteps, the distinctive jingle of his keys, the particular rumble of his car's engine starting in the driveway. The radio, often tuned to classic rock stations, was not for entertainment, but a deliberate tool to mask any accidental noise she might make during his absences. In this tightly controlled environment, time itself lost all shape and meaning. Fear became a pattern, a predictable and dreadful element of a suffocating daily existence. She later confided to investigators that she eventually stopped trying to count the passing days, a practice that had become too painful. The patterned walls of her confinement became her only constant, a static universe she came to know inch by painful inch. Patterson's interactions with her were minimal, functional, and robotic, his words seeming rehearsed and devoid of genuine human connection. He existed in a state of profound denial, maintaining the internal illusion that the situation was, in his own words, meant to be, constructing a warped reality where his monstrous actions were normal and justified. The news of Jayme Closs's incredible escape traveled with a speed that eclipsed any official press release or broadcast. Within mere hours, the quiet, snow-blanketed town of Gordon was swarmed by satellite news trucks, and headlines across the nation erupted with the same miraculous, life-affirming phrase, Jayme Closs is alive, a collective breath, held tightly by a concerned public for nearly 3 months, was finally, shakily released. The narrative, once dominated entirely by fear and an impenetrable mystery, began its profound and powerful transformation into a story of breathtaking endurance and unparalleled presence of mind. Jayme was swiftly rushed to a nearby hospital for a comprehensive medical and psychological evaluation, where she was soon after tearfully and joyfully reunited with her extended family. She was notably thin and pale, her voice often quiet, but her striking alertness and clarity profoundly moved everyone who met her. Specialists in trauma worked with her patiently and carefully, allowing her to recount her harrowing experience in her own time and in manageable fragments. She explained how she had consciously turned her captivity into a grim study of her captor, constantly watching for patterns, learning his habits and moods, and patiently waiting for the one inevitable moment when his rigid, self-imposed control would finally falter. Her decision to escape, she revealed, was not a product of sudden, blind panic. It was a calculated, courageous act, the result of weeks of silent observation and a mind that had fiercely, stubbornly refused to surrender its autonomy. Jake Patterson, in a stark and telling contrast, displayed a near void of emotion throughout the legal proceedings. During official questioning, he described his meticulously planned and executed actions with strangely detached words like simple and necessary, a cold vocabulary that chilled even the most experienced and hardened investigators in the room. There was no discernible rage, no visible sorrow, and certainly no guilt, only a dispassionate, methodical recounting of events. He explained how he had followed Jayme for days, mapped her school bus route, and stolen a vehicle specifically for the night of the crime with the precision of a military operation. Authorities later classified his mindset as that of a controlled offender, a rare and dangerous profile of an individual who derives a deep-seated sense of power not from chaotic, impulsive violence but from the meticulous imposition of a strict, predetermined order upon another human being. In the courtroom, the physical evidence presented a damning, unassailable case. In the months and years that followed the dramatic conclusion of the case, the name Jayme Closs settled into the national consciousness not as a perpetual victim, but as an enduring and powerful emblem of human survival and the resilience of the spirit. Her small hometown of Barron, once a focal point of a collective nightmare, gradually became a symbol of recovery and hope, with vibrant green ribbons, the universal color of hope and awareness for missing children, adorning trees, mailboxes, and lampposts for miles around. Media analysts and psychologists alike sought to understand the source of her incredible strength, probing how a 13-year-old could endure such profound isolation and relentless psychological pressure and emerge not broken, but with a steady, unwavering core. The answer, it seemed to all, lay not in any supernatural or extraordinary power, but in a profound, quiet, and innate strength that she had managed to cultivate and cling to in the absolute darkest of places. She consciously and wisely chose to rebuild her life away from the glaring, intrusive public spotlight, granting only one major television interview to reclaim her own narrative before decisively retreating into a cherished and fiercely protected privacy. The case also left a tangible, positive legacy on the systems designed to protect the vulnerable. It directly led to important reforms in how emergency 911 call centers handle silent calls, leading to improved tracing technologies and more effective response protocols. Law enforcement academies now study the investigation as a masterclass in persistence, digital forensic analysis, and community engagement in the face of overwhelming uncertainty and public pressure. Over time, the public focus irrevocably shifted from the anatomy of the crime itself to the undeniable power of the human spirit. The story is no longer, and will never again be, about a man who exerted absolute control. It is now and forever about a girl who, against impossible odds, courageously seized it all back. In Barron and across the country, Jake Patterson's name has deliberately faded into well-deserved obscurity, actively erased from daily conversation. People instead choose to remember and to celebrate the cold but sunlit January day when a miracle, in the form of a determined young girl, walked out of the woods and back into her life. The case is officially and permanently closed, yet its deeper, more human meaning remains powerfully, inspiringly open.